Hey friends, welcome and thank you for clicking on today's video. I'm really happy you're here. If this is your first time visiting, I'd love it if you subscribe and turn on the bell. It really helps me keep sharing these bedtime stories with you. I'm curious, where are you from and what time is it there? Let me know in the comments. I love seeing who's listening from all over the world. Honestly, I've been facing a little problem. My stories aren't getting many views, and it makes it hard to keep bringing you new ones. If you enjoy these tales, sharing this video with friends who love horror stories would mean the world to me. It really helps me continue. Thank you so much. Now, let's get comfortable and begin tonight's story. It's been years since that Halloween. I still remember every detail, every sound, every shadow, every heartbeat, and yet I can barely bring myself to talk about it. Maybe that's why I never really left Maple Hollow. Even after college, even after moving across states, something about those woods, about that night, stayed with me. They say time heals, but some nights, time just stretches the fear longer, makes it quieter and sharper. It was October again, years later. The leaves were falling, dry and brittle. The air smelled of smoke from fireplaces in nearby homes. Halloween decorations lined the streets, pumpkins carved with grins that seemed innocent, cheerful. But I wasn't going to a party. I wasn't looking for candy. I was going back. I told myself it was to face the past, to understand, to see if it was really real. I drove alone, my old Jeep rattling down the dirt roads toward Maple Hollow. The forest looked the same, the trees leaning over the path, the ground soft with leaves, the air carrying a chill that made the hairs on my arms stand up. The clearing was exactly as I remembered. The circle of flat ground, the old pines, the remains of small fire pits carved into the earth. I stepped out, flashlight in hand, and everything felt waiting. I remembered that first night vividly. Ethan's laugh, Maya filming, Jacob scoffing, Riley's calm voice keeping everyone grounded, and the thing we couldn't explain, the lanterns, the whispers, the strange carved faces. I felt my chest tighten. There, in the center of the clearing, was something new. A stone figure, foot tall, sitting cross-legged. Its face was worn smooth, but I knew it was her, the woman from the river, the woods, the lost Halloween. Around its neck, a red ribbon fluttered in the autumn wind. I knelt down slowly, heart hammering. The silence was thicker than ever. Then I heard it, faint, almost too soft to be real, greater than Riley. I froze. The voice wasn't angry. It wasn't loud, just soft, lonely, broken. I whispered, trembling, "Who's there?" No answer. Then the wind shifted. The leaves rustled, not like leaves, but like whispers brushing against my ears. "Don't leave me." I swallowed hard. I wanted to run, but I stayed. I remembered the lanterns from that night. Slowly, I walked to the edge of the clearing. There, flickering in the shadows, were three lanterns floating just above the ground. Their flames were blue, small, alive. I could see shapes inside, shadows moving, twisting, human shapes, maybe children, or maybe not. I called out, voice shaking, "I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to understand." For a moment, nothing. Then the lanterns moved closer. Slowly, the shadows inside reached toward me, and then I saw her. The woman, pale, hair drifting like smoke, eyes dark but watching. I collapsed onto the forest floor, trying to make sense of it. Everything came back in waves. Ethan screaming, Maya filming, Jacob lost in the trees, Riley clutching my arm. The carved faces on the pumpkins, the whispers, the cold hands brushing our wrists. We had been trapped in a circle that wasn't just physical. It was something else. Something that didn't follow normal rules of space or time. And now, I was alone, but it felt the same. The shadows inside the lanterns whispered again, Stay, stay with us. My heart pounded. I remembered the camera, the footage. I remembered seeing her face through the lens, gray, pale, and smiling, candle flame flickering inside her mouth. It wasn't a memory. It was here, now. A breeze brushed against my wrist. Cold, too cold. I looked down. A hand, pale, thin, almost translucent, rested on my arm. I wanted to pull away, to run, but something in her presence stopped me. Not fear exactly. Sadness, desperation. I whispered, I can't stay. She tilted her head, slowly, eyes hollow, but pleading. Greater than, please, just notice me. And then she vanished. The lanterns dimmed, one by one, until only the blue flame remained in the stone figure at the center of the clearing. I sat there for hours, just breathing. It wasn't about anger. It wasn't about haunting. It was about loneliness, about being unseen, forgotten. Years later, Ethan, Maya, Jacob, none of them came back. I survived because I was willing to listen, to look. I realized that night, that year, the forest didn't want to harm anyone. It just wanted to be remembered. And sometimes, when the wind moves through the trees on Halloween, I hear her humming, soft broken, waiting. Riley, don't leave me. I always stop, pause, and just listen. Eventually, I drove back. The forest faded behind me. The clearing disappeared under the trees, but I still feel it. Every Halloween, every gust of wind through dry leaves, every flicker of candlelight. I keep a small lantern in my room now, not to summon her, not to tempt the past, but to remember, to notice, because some things don't just disappear, they wait, fade out, soft wind, faint flicker of candle flame, distant hollow whisper, don't leave me. Halloween night used to be my favorite time of year. Something about that air, crisp, cold, and filled with the smell of wood smoke and candy, made me feel alive. But after that night, I can't stand the sound of a campfire anymore. 3 years ago, when I was in college, my friends and I decided to do something different for Halloween. No crowded parties, no cheap costumes, just one quiet night, away from people, out where we could see the stars. Our group was small. Ethan, the loud one who always tried to act brave. Maya, who was into ghost hunting shows and carried her camera everywhere. Jacob, the skeptic, who thought all paranormal stuff was fake. And Riley, the calm one. She always noticed things before the rest of us did. And me, the one who thought a Halloween camping trip sounded harmless. We picked a place an hour outside town, an old state park near Maple Hollow. It used to be a small village back in the 1800s, but it burned down after a fire swept through one Halloween night. Nobody rebuilt it. Locals still said that sometimes, if the air was cold enough, you could smell the smoke. We thought it was just a spooky legend. We left just before sunset. The sky was the color of rust and gold. leaves falling in slow spirals around us. Ethan's old truck rattled down the dirt road, music low, everyone laughing. The trail into the woods was narrow, 2 people wide, covered in leaves. By the time we reached the clearing, the sun had already dropped, leaving that soft orange glow that turns everything gray and quiet. The clearing was perfect, a circle of flat ground surrounded by tall pines. No houses, no roads, just forest. We built a small campfire, unpacked snacks, and took turns telling ghost stories. It felt warm, cozy, like a scene from an old memory. Riley took a photo of the fire and said, "For once, this Halloween actually feels peaceful." I wish it had stayed that way. Around 10 p.m., we were roasting marshmallows when it started. A knock, soft rhythmic, like someone gently tapping wood. We all turned toward the trees. "Probably a branch," Jacob said, tossing another stick into the fire. Then it came again, 3 times. Closer, Maya switched on her camera light and aimed it into the dark. "Who's there?" she called out, half joking. No answer. The forest had gone silent. No insects, no wind, just that faint tapping again, from behind us this time. Ethan stood up, flashlight shaking slightly. "Hey, whoever's out there, not funny." But when he aimed the light, there was nothing, just a tree, and carved into its bark, barely visible, were the words, "Welcome back." We tried to laugh it off. Riley said maybe hikers had carved it earlier, but when we turned back to the fire, something new was sitting on the ground near our bags. A lantern, old-fashioned, rusted, still warm to the touch. No one had brought it. Inside, the tiny flame flickered a dull orange, but the wick wasn't burning. It was like the light itself was alive, pulsing faintly in rhythm with the wind. Maya started filming again. "This is crazy. Guys, this is so haunted." Ethan rolled his eyes, but I saw his hand tremble as he picked it up. The second he lifted it, the flame died, and from somewhere deep in the woods came a faint woman's voice, soft, distant, broken. "Put it back." We froze. The voice wasn't close, but it wasn't far either. It echoed, carried by the cold air, almost gentle, but filled with something wrong. Jacob whispered, "Someone's messing with us." He grabbed his flashlight and walked a few steps toward the trees. The light barely reached 10 feet before the darkness swallowed it. He stopped, turned to say something, then frowned. "Guys, why are there pumpkins out here?" We all stood. There, behind him, were 2 jack-o'-lanterns sitting side by side on the ground. We hadn't seen them before. The faces weren't smiling. They were carved with long, downward mouths, eyes gouged too deep. Inside them, small flames flickered, blue instead of orange. Then, both flames went out at once, and that laugh came again. A woman's laugh, quiet, almost like it came from under the earth. We decided to leave. The trail that led us in was supposed to be right behind the clearing, but when we turned our flashlights that way, all we saw were trees. No markers, no footprints, nothing. Ethan cursed and walked ahead, trying to retrace our steps. I followed, holding the dead lantern without realizing it. Riley whispered behind me, Don't drop it." I looked down and saw something inside the glass. A faint reflection, not of me, of a woman, standing behind me in the dark. I spun around. Nobody was there. We kept walking, but the forest seemed to twist. Every direction looked the same. The air was heavy, like we were underwater. Then came the whispering. Dozens of voices, children, maybe overlapping, too soft to make out. Sometimes I caught fragments, greater than stay, cold, help us. Riley grabbed my hand, trembling. She said, "Don't listen. They're not talking to you." We kept moving, but after what felt like hours, we stumbled into the same clearing again. The campfire still smoking, our bags still there, and beside the fire, there was another lantern, identical to the first. We made it back to the car just before sunrise. None of us spoke the whole drive home. When we reached town, Maya realized her camera was missing. 3 days later, a park ranger found it. It was sitting on the same log where we'd built our fire. The video started normal, laughing, marshmallows, stories. Then it got shaky, the lens turning toward the woods. At one point, as the camera swung past the fire, a face appeared, right at the edge of the light. A woman, her skin gray, her eyes too dark. And when she smiled, you could see the candle flame burning inside her mouth. The final frame showed her stepping closer, whispering something, but the sound glitched. When the audio was slowed down, it sounded like, greater than, we just wanted one more Halloween. Last week, on Halloween again, Ethan texted me. He said he was driving back out there. He wanted to prove it was all just an illusion. That was 2 weeks ago. His truck was found near the Maple Hollow sign. Engine still warm, doors open. The only thing inside was a single lantern, burning with a faint blue flame. Sometimes I wonder if they were really ghosts, or if we just stepped into a night that didn't want to let go. Halloween's supposed to be about pretending, masks, costumes, laughter, but that night, something pretended to be human, and it almost fooled us. A viewer once wrote to me about something that happened when they were 12. They lived in a small 2-story house on the outskirts of a quiet town. Nothing fancy, just a modest home with faded paint and a wooden porch that creaked in the wind. Nights that were never truly peaceful. Even the walls seemed to listen. The winter was harsh that year. The heater barely worked, and the wind whistled through every crack in the old wooden window frames. Their parents had gone to a late meeting, leaving them home with an older sibling. They were supposed to study for school the next day, but as soon as darkness fell, the house felt heavier, almost alive, like it was watching them, waiting. They were sitting at the kitchen table, pencil in hand, homework sprawled across the worn wood. The only light came from a small desk lamp, casting a warm but weak circle of illumination. That's when they noticed it, a shift in the hallway shadows. At first, it seemed normal. Shadows danced under the dim light, but slowly, impossibly, a shape formed at the far end of the hallway leading upstairs. It was tall, too tall for any human, and elongated unnaturally, its edges wiggling as if trying to hold form. A chill crept over their skin, brushing the back of their neck. Their older sibling hummed softly, absorbed in their book, unaware. But the viewer felt it, the sensation of being watched silently from just beyond the edge of vision. Then came the whisper, so soft it could have been the wind. "Don't. Come closer." Their hearts skipped a beat. It wasn't just the cold air. It was deliberate, patient, almost mournful. The viewer's hands shook as they reached for a flashlight, the beam cutting through the dimness like a knife. They stepped slowly into the hallway, every floorboard groaning underfoot. The light fell on the familiar beige walls and crooked family photos. Nothing. Then, at the top of the stairs, the shadow appeared again. It leaned against the railing, disturbingly still. Its form was vaguely human, but not quite. Its head tilted unnaturally, and the shoulders slouched in a way no human could. It didn't breathe, but the presence of it filled the hallway, pressing against their senses. "Who are you?" the viewer whispered, voice trembling. No response. Only the quiet, expectant watching. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. The shadow did not move closer, but it was alive in subtle ways. A slow ripple, like ink, spreading in water. Then came the sound of the clock. Slow, heavy, each tick hammering onto the silence of the house. For a heartbeat, the shadow disappeared. The viewer's stomach dropped. It hadn't gone. It hadn't moved. They could feel it in the edges of their vision, in the press of the air behind their neck. Then the stairs creaked. Not a footstep, not a normal sound, but a pressure moving across the boards, deliberate and slow. The older sibling finally noticed, eyes wide. "Do you see it too?" they whispered. They backed toward the kitchen, flashlight beam shaking. The shadow didn't advance, but it shifted, sliding along the hallway wall in a fluid, impossible way. It stopped mid-hall, its form dark and thick, almost tangible. Then the whisper returned, clearer this time, closer, almost right beside their ear. "Go. Away. Now." The siblings bolted to the living room, hands fumbling at the lock. Through the crack of the door, they could still make out the faint, long shape, standing silently. It did not rush or chase. It merely waited. The air grew heavier, colder, charged with a presence that made every nerve ache. The house felt alive in a way that was not friendly. It was aware. When their parents returned the next morning, the siblings tried to explain. Words felt foolish in the light of day, but in the hallway, evidence remained. Thin, elongated hand-shaped smudges on the walls, slightly gray, faintly shiny, like old dust disturbed. The photos on the wall had shifted, tilted, as if someone had leaned over them. The viewer's sibling whispered, "It was real." Even years later, the hallway held its weight. The memory clung to the place. Nights felt different, quieter, heavier, even when the house was empty. The viewer said they weren't afraid anymore. Not truly, but they were careful. Sometimes shadows are not meant to harm. Sometimes they are reminders that something is still watching, still waiting. And sometimes, when the wind is right, the clock ticks slow and the house is silent. You can hear it, a whisper, soft, chilling, patient. "Don't. Come closer." I remember that Halloween like it happened yesterday, even though it was more than a decade ago. I was 14, and my cousin, just a year older, came over to go trick-or-treating. That year, our parents were too busy, so they let us roam the neighborhood freely. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of wet leaves and wood smoke from the chimneys. Fog rolled in low, hugging the ground, curling around the lampposts and the edges of houses. Most of the neighborhood kids were running from house to house, their laughter high-pitched and excited. But at the far end of our street, something felt off. There was an old wooden house, the kind everyone whispered about. Paint peeling, broken shutters, dark windows. Even during the day, it looked empty. At night, with fog curling around it, and Halloween decorations hanging crookedly. It looked alive, like it was breathing. We started down the street, our costumes damp from the earlier rain. I was holding a small pumpkin I had carved earlier, just a simple face with jagged teeth. Every step toward the old house made my stomach tighten. I could feel the fog pressing against my legs, as if warning me to turn back. The front door was slightly open, an orange glow flickering inside like candlelight, but no candles were visible. The light seemed to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat. From inside, I thought I saw a figure, tall, unnaturally thin, standing perfectly still. Its face was hidden in shadow, but its smile, that smile, was carved across its features, too wide, too perfect, like a living jack-o'-lantern. My cousin tugged at my sleeve. "Let's just go," he whispered. I nodded, but I couldn't move. Something kept me rooted in place, curiosity tangled with fear, dangerous curiosity that I would regret. Suddenly, the figure moved, and it didn't walk. It glided, smooth and silent, fog curling around its feet as if it didn't touch the ground. My pumpkin felt impossibly heavy in my hands, like a small stone pressed inside. I wanted to scream, but my voice was gone. My cousin grabbed my arm, eyes wide. "Run," he whispered. Then I noticed it wasn't alone. One shadow became two, then three, all gliding forward in unison, all with the same unnatural grin. They moved like shadows made solid, alive, patient, and aware. The air turned colder, bone-deep cold, that made my teeth chatter and fingers numb. Every nerve in my body screamed to flee, but my feet felt rooted to the foggy ground. A whisper brushed past my ear. "He smiles at you." It was soft, almost playful, but hollow, like the sound of wind through dead branches. My cousin grabbed my shoulder, shaking me. "Don't stop. Come on." We bolted down the street, the wooden boards of the porch creaking under our frantic steps. Every time I glanced back, the figures were still there, motionless, but somehow following, gliding through the fog without moving their feet. The glow from the house's doorway pulsed, almost like a heartbeat. The shadows weren't chasing us, but they watched, patient and unmoving. As we ran past neighboring houses, I noticed strange things. Leaves rustled without wind. Faint laughter twisted into hollow, high-pitched echoes. Street lamps flickered, casting long, impossible shadows that didn't belong to anything. My cousin tripped over something, a small circular imprint in the dirt. I leaned down and saw dozens of them, like tiny pumpkin seeds pressed into the soil, leading from the doorway to the edge of the fog, and then vanishing. Every instinct screamed danger. Every fiber of my being told me not to look back, yet I couldn't help it. In the doorway of the old house, I swore I saw the figure lean slightly forward, head tilting unnaturally, the smile stretching wider, impossible, alive. We made it back to a friend's porch, panting and trembling. My pumpkin, once light, now felt like it weighed 10 pounds. My hand shook so badly, I dropped it. The carved teeth seemed sharper, almost grinning at me in the dim porch light. I remember trying to explain to my cousin what I saw, but the words felt absurd, even to me. He nodded, wide-eyed, gripping my arm. It was real. It had to be real. We stayed there until the fog lifted and the street became quiet again. Only then did we dare look back. The old house stood dark, empty, silent. The doorway closed as if it had never been opened. The next day, curiosity overpowered fear. We crept back toward the house. In the sunlight, it looked abandoned. Paint peeling, windows blank and cold, boards hanging loose. But in the dirt near the porch, tiny circular footprints remained, pressed deep into the soil. They weren't normal, round, perfect, like seeds pressed in one by one. They led from the doorway, across the yard, and vanished as if swallowed by the earth. I touched one, cold, hard, not mud, not dirt, something else, real, solid. Even now, every Halloween, I feel it, a subtle awareness in my chest, a whispering memory, soft and patient. He smiles at you. I stayed in a hostel for college. It was an old building, 3 floors, made of red bricks that had started to crumble in places. The hostel had been around for decades, housing students who came from far-off towns and cities. At first, it felt normal, noisy, crowded, with the usual sounds of people chatting, footsteps on stairs, and the occasional snore echoing through the hallways. But then, I moved into room 312 on the top floor. It was smaller than the others, with a single window facing the narrow alley behind the hostel. The window was always closed, but I could hear the wind scratching against it, especially at night. The first night, nothing seemed strange. I unpacked my bag, set my books on the table, and lay down. The floorboards creaked under my own weight, but I shrugged it off. Around midnight, as I was reading, I heard a soft whisper, barely audible, coming from the corner of the room. "Hey, wake up." I froze. My heart thudded, and I told myself it was the wind or my imagination. But then the whisper came again, clearer, closer to my bed. "Hey, wake up." I swung on the bed, flashlight in hand, shining into the corner. Nothing, just shadows. The room was empty, but I could feel it. A presence, like someone was standing right behind me, just out of reach. The next night, I couldn't sleep. Around 1 a.m., I noticed the window curtains moving slightly, though the window was closed. The light from the corridor flickered through, and for a split second, I saw a figure standing just outside the glass, staring in. Not fully visible, but tall and thin, its face obscured in darkness. It didn't move, didn't make a sound, but it watched me patiently. I blinked, and it was gone. My pulse was racing, but I told myself, it's nothing, just shadows, just my mind. Over the next week, the visits became frequent, always around midnight, footsteps above me when no one else was awake, whispering voices outside the door, calling my name softly, almost tenderly, a faint cold draft brushing my neck, even when the window was closed. One night, I woke up and saw a shadow standing at the foot of my bed, taller than any person I knew, thin, with elongated arms hanging loosely. It didn't speak, just stood there, tilting its head slowly, like it was curious, or studying me. I didn't scream, I didn't move. My mind went blank, and then, as if it decided I wasn't worth attention, it slid across the room and vanished into the wall, leaving only a chill behind. On a weekend, I met an older student who used to stay in the hostel. She told me something that made my blood run cold. "There's a room upstairs," she said quietly, "room 312. Every few years, someone stays there and sees things, shadows, whispers. The room has a history. Years ago, a student went missing there. No one knows what happened. Some say the room remembers." I laughed nervously. "That's just a rumor." But that night, everything changed. Around 2 a.m., I woke to a scraping sound, like fingernails dragging along the floor. My blanket was pulled gently, almost teasingly. I held my breath, pretending to be asleep. Then I heard a soft whisper right in my ear. "You're awake." Finally, I turned slowly. At the foot of the bed stood a tall shadow, darker than the darkness around it, with limbs too long and fingers that seemed to stretch impossibly. The air was cold, making my skin tingle painfully. It didn't attack. It didn't speak further. It just watched me, tilting its head slowly, and then vanished, not walking out, not slipping into the shadows, but dissolving like smoke into the corner. I sat there for hours, frozen, listening to the creaks and whispers of the hostel. By morning, the room felt normal again, like nothing had happened, but the memory of its presence stayed. A weight in my chest, a whisper lingering in my ears. I left room 312 after a month. I never stayed on the top floor again. Years later, when I returned to the hostel, I noticed the faint marks on the floor near the window, small scratches and patterns I didn't recognize, almost like someone had traced letters or shapes in the wood. I don't know if the shadow was a student who disappeared or something else entirely, but I do know this. The room remembers who stays there, and sometimes when the hostel is quiet and the wind is right, you can hear whispers calling your name, inviting you to wake up just for a moment. I still remember that day like it was yesterday. We were 17, that restless summer after graduation, when the world still felt safe and endless. There were 5 of us: Lena, Chris, Amy, Tyler, and me, Sarah. We'd been best friends since middle school, and this was supposed to be one last simple hangout before everyone went their separate ways for college. We packed sandwiches, chips, a Bluetooth speaker, and an old camera from my dad's drawer. No big plan, just a picnic by the Stillwater River a few miles outside of town. The sun was warm, the air smelled like dry grass and river mud. Nothing felt wrong, not yet. We drove partway down the dirt road, then walked the rest, through a stretch of forest that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Tall trees leaned over the trail, their branches heavy with moss. You could hear cicadas buzzing, and the air shimmered with heat. Halfway down, we passed a small stone marker, half buried in the ground. Someone had tied a red ribbon around it, faded almost to pink. Tyler joked, "Creepy little gravestone, huh?" Amy told him to shut up. We laughed, but none of us looked at it for long. The trees opened up suddenly, and there it was, the river, wide, slow, silver. We spread a blanket under a willow tree, kicked off our shoes, and turned on some music. Chris jumped right into the shallow water, splashing everyone. The rest of us sat in the sun, eating and talking about the future, college, jobs, life. For a while, everything was perfect. Then, around 4 p.m., the wind changed. The air grew still, heavy, like the world was holding its breath. The laughter faded. Even the birds went silent. No wind, no rustling leaves, just the sound of slow-moving water. Lena frowned. "Do you hear that?" Amy nodded. "It's too quiet." That's when Chris stopped moving. He was kneeling at the edge of the river, staring into the water. "Hey, you okay?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just pointed. At first, I didn't see anything, just our reflections warping in the ripples. Then the sunlight shifted, and I saw it. A pale face beneath the surface. Eyes open, lips slightly parted. not moving. It looked like a woman, her hair drifting like seaweed in the current, her skin too white, too still. Amy gasped, "Oh my God, is that?" Before she could finish, a ripple spread across the water, and the face was gone. Chris stumbled backward, pale as chalk. We all stared at the river, waiting for something else. But it was perfectly still again. No bubbles, no movement, just silence. We packed up in a rush. Nobody said the word body, but we were all thinking it. The sun had already dipped behind the trees, and the air felt colder than it should have been. As we started walking back through the woods, I heard something, a faint sound, like someone humming. It wasn't coming from any of us. It came from behind, from the direction of the river. It was soft at first, like a lullaby. Then a whisper followed it. "Don't leave me." The voice was fragile, almost sad. Amy screamed, and we started running, crashing through the trees, breathless and terrified. I didn't dare look back, but I swear, just before the trail opened up to the road, I felt cold fingers brush my wrist, like someone trying to stop me. When we finally made it back to the car, shaking and out of breath, Lena realized her camera was gone. She wanted to go back for it. Chris snapped, "No way. Forget it." So we left it there. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time the wind hit my window, I thought I heard that same humming. Faint, careful, right outside. I told myself it was just the trees, but the melody, it was the same one. 2 years passed. We barely talked about that day again. Then one night, Chris messaged me out of nowhere. He said he'd gone back to Stillwater with his coworkers for a camping trip. The forest had grown thick, the trail almost gone, but the river was still there. And right where we'd sat, under that same willow tree, there was something new. A stone figure, maybe a foot tall, sitting cross-legged on the ground. Its face was weathered smooth, but it had a faint smile carved into it. Someone had tied a bright red ribbon around its neck, just like the one we'd seen on the stone marker before. Chris said he didn't stay long. He kept hearing something over the sound of the river. At first, it was wind. Then, it became humming. The same slow tune. He left before dark. It's been years now. We all moved to different states. But sometimes, when it rains, I'll hear that same quiet hum under the thunder. And I'll remember that pale face under the river, eyes open, hair drifting, watching us. Maybe she wasn't angry. Maybe she just wanted someone to notice her. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind moves through the trees outside my window, I hear a whisper beneath it, soft, pleading, and familiar. "Don't leave me." Halloween night used to be my favorite time of year. Something about that air, crisp, cold, and filled with the smell of wood smoke and candy, made me feel alive. But after that night, I can't stand the sound of a campfire anymore. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end. I really hope you enjoyed tonight's story. Be ready, because the next story will be coming very soon. And if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and share with friends who love bedtime horror stories. It really means a lot to me. Until next time, sleep well and let the stories stay with you, softly.